That's I've initiated the recording now. So when we open our MySQL workbench, that's for people that are actually practicing on their own time. So because in the class we are not using the MySQL workbench, but we encourage you all to actually practice with the database. So on the schema level, the database. So on the schema level, for me, I have like 3 databases. By default, you have the 6. So I have 2 other ones. So the SQL training was the one we have to create by default. So once you double click on it, it's actually that's the active database now that anything I'm running is going to be running against it. So once I do that, I can select from the tables and everything. So I just select stuff from employees. So now, and I mentioned that we can you can use this particular icon next to the save icon to just run that will run what exactly we have in the database. So that's how to get it. So I noticed also this by default this particular page is open. You don't actually need it, so you can turn it. You can click on the arrow here to hide it. No, I do this icon, so it hides it and everything. So with that, you have more real estate that you can actually work with. I hope that's clear. Okay, so that being out of the way, we can go straight to today's class, schedule for today's class. Yes. So we will start from last week. We worked on our class was usually on where clause, having something on the where clause, being able to actually do being able to filter out the results from our SQL database, being able to just get what we need from the database. So today, the major focus of today is going to be aggregate function, but I just want us to talk about some more thing on that where clause to continue a bit on it, and then before we move to the aggregate function and grouping that's next for today's class. So we will look at case statements. Case statements can be used both in your select column, in the column, or in the where clause. So I want us to look at that. Also, if I have a number, for example, you have some number in database that is very long, you might want to like trunk the number into like a presentable format, like a 2 decimal place or something, like round it up or truncate some additional number there. So I just want to show that function. There's a function in SQL generally that you can use for that. And there's something called order of precedence. Like if in my where clause I have multiple things there, I have some and clause, some or and other things. So how does SQL, how does it undo it? What comes before what comes first? So we look at that also. Then we go to the different aggregate function we have. And once you are using aggregate function, especially with some things, you have to do a group by. So we go there and then filter, how to filter based on that, some form of filter, some advanced filtering. So that's majorly what we have for today. So before we go to, I hope we all got the email that shows the platform we are still using, but let me drop that in the chat also in case we don't have it here. So we are using the same platform that we actually used last week for the class. If you don't have the data already, I sent it, it's a part of the mail that was sent, but you can get it from there. So from here, where we actually going last week, which is from this particular page, you see the data we are using, so you can copy it. You can copy it, and in the SQLite online, the database we are using here, there are different types of database on this platform, but we are using the MS SQL. So when you double click on that, so for me, because I've run that script before, I have the tables here. But if you've not run it before, you can want to override this guy. Okay. So you can just paste it. You can just paste the content and click on run here. So once you do that, you have additional. You have these tables I have on my screen. category, customer. Demo is there by default. So other ones like customer, your employees, and other ones you have that also. So the first thing I wanted us to look at is case statement. Case statement, yeah, so case statement is just allow you to do some conditional logic in SQL. It's just like doing a if-else statement. So if you've had some programming experience or something before, you probably have seen an if else, which is if this happen, do this. Else, the data you're running it on the first link I shared, which is SQLite Online. But you can also run the data, but the one in the email, you should use the one in the email. That one is formatted for almost every database. This particular one only work on Microsoft SQL database. So you can use that on, you can use that on the MySQL workbench also. So for example, if you look at my own MySQL, I have the same set of database here. No, great, it's not part of it. But I have the database on this one also. Okay. So for what I'm saying, okay, so the if else, how case works is you have a case and then you have, okay, if this condition is satisfied, do this. Else, at the end of it, else do this. So let's go straight to that. It actually makes us be able to actually categorize our data to some conditions. So let's just go to the SQL Lite online platform and see how it works. So although the syntax is simple, is just, let me just do it here. Syntax is case when. So within the when, within this when here, I have the condition I want to satisfy. So it could be when age, I don't think I have the data anyway, age greater than or age less than 18, right? So assuming there is a column in the database that have age, like I can say age less than 18, then so the then now is now what I want it to do. After the then, I have what I told you that I want to do. So for example, I can have data and then say, okay, you should display underage. Then maybe I can have multiple when, if I have multiple conditions that I want to check. So I can say age less than 65. Let me just use this. Let me say age less than 65. So when I say age less than 65, so what happens is once zero, okay, let me finish it first before I explain. So I can say age less than 5, then we should say working class. Else, so if the first two conditions is not satisfied, okay, then it ends with end. So you start with case, then ends with end. End shows that okay, that is the end. Oh, so let me just put it as age. So the age, so things are memory age. So the 90, so from the birthday, from the birth date, which is the day of birth, I'm trying to get out the age of each of them. So 1972. So okay, the person is 72 years old now, and so on. So that's just basically what I'm trying to do here. So now, instead of that age I have in the script there. So basically, yeah, what I want us to actually note is the format of writing case. So we might actually want to write this down, which is the case when, then the condition. So this is the condition. Then what you want to do. What is the output? Right? Case, the next one, the output, then else is okay. If everything I have above has not taken place, have not occurred, what should it do? So if you have multiple conditions, right? If the first condition, second condition, another ones have not it wasn't satisfied. So because it runs in sequence. So once the first condition is satisfied, it's not going to check any other thing. So for example, this particular one is going to work for only people within the age of 18 and 65 and 64 because it's less than, I'm using less than, and 64. Yes. So that's what it is. So let me just replace the age with the long query I have here. So if I run this, just show me what it, but let me just show. So there, for me to show, I want to show all the columns we have in the table before showing this. So let's just do the star. So if you remember, the star is like to show all the columns in the table from the first class we have. Instead of specifying the columns one by one, I can just say, okay, I want to actually show all the columns. Well, I needed if I have other condition here that I don't want, I need to put an alias so you to know where exactly you should pick all the star, all the columns for, so I can actually do a star, which is everything from this table. Then after that, add this particular condition to add this particular records. So now we have all the data of the employees and the category the category we think they belongs to, right? So you say, okay, this particular person is probably working class. This one is, so it's just more of like trying to do a grouping, trying to do yes, a form of classifying the data. Yes, a form of classifying. So I could actually probably know, okay, these are the set of data. These are the set of people that are working class and something. So later on in the class, when we get to group, we might be using this case to just group by something. But I think at this point we can move to the next condition, which is the trunk and loads. Yes, the truncate and round up. Yes, and round up. Yes. So for that particular case, we are going to be picking. Okay, if you notice, if you have multiple query on your screen, I might have said that, okay, for example, I have multiple screen. If I want to run a particular part, this works in almost every ID. If I don't want to run everything, you can actually select what you want to run like this, and then click on run. So what that works in most screen, even in MySQL Workbench or any tool we want, any tool you have. Once you select it, it runs only the one that is selected. But if you don't select anything and you click on run, it's going to try to run everything on the screen. So, for example, from the product table that we already have this. I have the price. Some of the price actually comes with decimal points, right? So there may be a reason why you don't want it to have decimal points. You want to round it up into maybe a whole number or two. And there might be some cases where you have multiple decimal points, like 5 decimal points. By the time we get to things like average, we are going to see a more use for this. But let's just get it now, and then we'll come back to it when we get to average. We'll probably use it again when we get to average. But basically, what the roundup mesh function in SQL is just round, and it takes two parameters: the column or the value you want to round up. So, for example, I can actually type something like this there by myself, comma. So, okay, let me use comma the how many decimal places do I want to round it up. So if I do this, let's start. If I do this, so this is the value, right? I have 10.10.06. I'm trying to write it up in two decimal places. So that round up number to be 10.03. So round is one. So it takes how many decimal places? It takes two parameter. The value we are trying to round up, which could be a column name from a table, and then the number of decimal places. we're trying to do. So going back to our table here, and I want to round up the price to one decimal place or to whole number. Let's round up to one decimal place first. Then we can come back. We can do a whole number. Let's just go straight to the whole number. So if I want to do it whole number, zero decimal place, so I can just place it to 0. Okay. Price. So with that, our value, so for example, you see the product with ID 5. So the price, the round of value is now 21. I'm trying to look for, okay, yes. So the ones that are up to the roundup work like simple math, the basic mathematics that we know. Once it's above, the one decimal place is above 5, it round it up, If it's below 5, the decimal place, it round it down. It just work like the basic mathematics. Right? So that's what it is. Here we have here. So also the next one I mentioned is we have the trunk. Truncate works like it works similar to the round, but in this case, that it doesn't round up or round down. It's going to actually truncate the value. Okay, this is my this. So some functions are not actually available in every language. So for example, in Oracle, you have the trunk, but in MySQL also that we use, we have the trunk. But in Microsoft SQL, because this particular one is actually Microsoft SQL, it's used as I think it's flow. Let me just confirm. Let's, so so in we have like it's actually floor here. We have floor, we have ceiling, but I don't think it takes. I think the floor takes only one value. I think it takes only one argument. So that one rounds it up to the highest whole number. So this is probably going to round it up to just 10. So in Microsoft SQL, we have the floor and then we have the ceiling. Ceiling round it up, floor round it down. But I know most of the time, what we are trying to use is going to be like the round that we want to round it up to a particular number of decimal points. So ceiling round it down, or ceiling round it up, floor round it down. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the agenda. Yes, so I mentioned that we have rule of okay, which of the you're trying to run it where I didn't get that. I'm looking at the
Sir, I'm trying to run the scripts from either the workbench or the online. So if I go online, that's the SQLite. And
yes.
I don't find that file already uploaded. So I need to upload it, right? Do I click on file, then open it from my desktop?
No.
Or
You don't need to
how do
click
you?
on file. Once you open it and open this particular database, I think it's going to show you prompt that you just click on OK there. And then you can paste this prompt, you can paste the script in the work area here and run it. So once you run it, the tables will be created.
Okay, so just Control A, that's text file you shared, right?
Yes, yes. Paste it here, which will it will run it and create the tables.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So the next thing I want us to remember, so this is obviously a continuation of last week's class, is actually the order of precedence. So there's something called order of precedence. Am I seeing my screen? I can't see the position. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, okay. It's no longer showing the red sign. Okay, so there's the order of precedence, which is if you have multiple things in your where clause, what happens before the next? What happened next? What happened? So how does it execute like in terms of what happened before the next one? So, for example, the first thing that happens always, just like our mathematics is board mass, the parenthesis takes precedence over everything. So if you want something to happen first, just put it in brackets. That will actually happen first. And then we have not operator, not this particular one. So if I have a then basically, okay, I think the next one I should have is the multiplication, division, and modulus, all these mathematical operations, just like, still like board mass. Then before the addition and subtraction, and then we have the comparison. So the comparison is in our where clause. We could add some values. We could have some operator in the first place, like to do some multiplication before we do our where clause. We start comparing values to what, and then we have our notes, we have and then or. The reason why I actually brought this up is this or values cause it used to cause some form of confusion at this early stage when you just start writing SQL. So because of the way it behaves, or is if this or this. So for example, in last class, we have something like this. We use this example where we have if the country is like Spain or like if the country is like Spain or SPA or is like Mexico, we should spill out all the record, the the customers that we have there. Okay. I'm trying to look for an additional. So assuming we have an additional statement to say, okay, we are trying to check. Let's look for. Let me let's use the product and the pricing for it. Let's use the product first for this condition. So there we have more data. So assuming I'm trying to say I want products from supplier ID 1 and so I want it from supplier ID 1 and category ID. So the category of that product, category ID equals 1. So, okay. So that it gave me only 2 records, but then I probably think, okay, let me even include another category. So I want to include category ID too. So I'm saying, okay, so I'm saying maybe I just want to use the or keyword now, and I say or category ID equals to 2. So most likely we are still thinking it's going to bring out supplier ID that is 1 and then bring maybe 3 records, at least from what I'm seeing here, maybe 3 records. But what happens is, let's run it and see what the result looks like. So now, for some reason, I'm seeing supplier that are not supplier ID 1. I'm seeing supplier that are supplier ID 2, supplier ID 3. Why? Why is that the case? So that's why we need to understand what happens. What's the precedence? How does it work? What runs before the next one? So if you notice in the precedence here, all is the last thing, or all statement, that's the last thing that actually gets run. So which means the statement will have run for, it will have checked for this guy. So it checks for, okay, where the supplier ID equals to 1 and category equals to 1. Or so it picks this, like this together, then it picks this separately. But what I had in mind is, I want to see the supplier ID 1 and then other category that is supplier ID 1 will have either 1 or 2. So if that's the aim, I need to add a bracket, a parenthesis around this. So with this, it knows that, okay, execute this first before combining it to other condition. So let's run this and see what the difference is. So now, instead of having other ones, so it's limited to only supplier ID 1, then I have the category that are category 1 and 2. Do you understand that? Do you get it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with this, we can move to the main topic for today, which is aggregate function. Aggregate basically, aggregate operation. So what is aggregate of function itself? How do we perform aggregate function? Aggregate function is basically it's some form of calculation we can do on a set of data. So there are things that you want to do. You want to count probably the number of students you have in the class. You want to get the sum of all the probably you are trying to sum up the total sales that was done for a particular day. You're trying to get the average call of students in the class. You want to get the oldest person in the oldest customer you have or youngest customer. So those are aggregate function basically, because for you to be able to achieve any of this, you have to use maybe like you are trying to do a count, sum, average. Okay, I didn't do it. Okay, you have to do. So let me get that. So we have count. Count is count. So if I want to count, so count is just count. If I want to get sum of it, like you want to add data together, addition, that is sum. We have average. We have minimum value, which is like the smallest value we have in that data set. We have maximum. Minimum, maximum, sum, average. So these are the most common ones. There are things like standard deviation, but that's what those ones you rarely use it on a day-to-day basis. So we have, like, if I want to count the number of records in a table. So for example, let's start with our product table. So we might want to know how many product types. So these are different product IDs that we have in this table, right? If you look at it, we have product ID 1, 2. Let me just put it. We have different products here. So for me to know the number of products that we have, you can just do a count. If I do a count star, I can do a count star. So count star just say, okay, basically count everything in the table and tell me, okay, we have 77. So I know we have 77 products. But also, I can want to get what is even from these products. how many, if I want to probably know, like, okay, out of all these products, we have 77 products, right? So this gives us, let me just put it 77. So I might want to be like, okay, we have some products, but I want to even know how many suppliers actually sent. Okay, it's connected back. Okay, so I can want to say count. I just want to count the unique record. So assuming I want to count the unique record, assuming they are duplicates. So for example, if I want to count on supplier ID, so supplier ID, so I can actually use, let me use supplier ID column as count by default. So if supplier ID. So the supplier ID by default we also return, because I just used that, it's probably going to return 77 also. Although if supplier ID have a null value, I don't know if you've seen, if you know what null is. Null is actually when we have no record in that particular data. If I use it like this one counts everything. But if I use this particular column, if there is null there, like there's no value, it's going to, it won't count that with it. I don't think I have any sample data that I can use for that in this. Let's create one sample record that we can actually use to show that. Let's insert a record into this table, into the supplier table. Into the product table, sorry, not supplier table. So I want to insert product value. So the first value is 78. Name should be, just name it test products. So I want the supplier ID to be null. I'm not passing any value so that I can show us category null units. One box. And price should be 101.6.45. So if I do this, I'm just trying to insert the record that have been null. So now going back to the first one we ran, when we ran the star, it's going to return 78 now because we added one more record, right? But because we didn't include in our supplier table column, the last record we inserted, it's actually not valid. So if I'm counting on supplier, it should not count that one. So I should get 77. So it's not going to count record that is not missing. So if I specify a particular column, it's going to count. Okay, the 77 stand for the number of records we have, the number of rows, right? So the initial 77. So do you know this hyphen? I thought last class mentioned it. There are different types of comments in our code. Okay, the double thing I put here is actually called comment. Comment is basically a part of the code that you don't want to run. So it's just a way of saying, okay, this is just a message, but it doesn't run it. So even if I'm running, if I select it and run, it's not going to be part of what's going to be run. What's going to run. So at times you use that in your code to just write, maybe you want to write something down, like a message down. So for example, I just want to note what's the value we got here. So I put a comment. So a comment here is double hyphen. So there are actually two types of comments. There is single line comment. So for diverting, there is something we call single line comment, which is this guy, single line. We are still going back to what we had before. I just saw a message, so I said, let me reply to this. We like single line comments. This is just one line. So if I move to the next line, I start typing anything. So let me start select. So it's notice that this is not like comment again. So it's a single line comment. So you have to comment it before it to become a comment back. So that's single line comment. And then there is multiple line comments. Multiple line comments start with backslash star, then it ends with star backslash. So within here, I can type multiple things. I can type a paragraph. So it takes multiple lines. So I can continue. Okay, so let's get back to, so that's all for, that's just, that was just by the way. Let me put it down here. So what I was discussing was, okay, so we have this star counts everything in the record, everything. So if I don't want by mistake to miss out any counts, so I can use it. Well, if you specify a column, by default, if all the values, if the columns have value all true, it's going to return the same data with this. But if that column have a null, it's not going to count it. So for example, the one we have here, we have, because we inserted a record that doesn't have value for supplier ID. When we do a count star, it returns 78. But when we do a count supplier ID, it return back to us 77. Right? So also, still on count, I probably want to count unique suppliers we have here, because if we look at the table, you remember that we have some suppliers that actually apply multiple times. I don't want to use product because product is relatively unique. Product ID is unique. So supplier, we can see that, okay, this product supplier, we have supplier ID 1, 2, 3, one that applies 3 times. So I just want to count the unique supplier ID. So you can also do that by including inside your count brackets, inside the count itself, you can include distinct, distinct space, then the column. Count distinct the column name that we want to count. So, and once, if we run this now, we are getting 29 instead of, as against the 77 we have before. So which means we have 29 unique supplier ID in this product table. Are we following?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. So we can move to the next aggregate function, which is sum. Sum is just to add value. So we have the product, we have the price for the product, right? We probably want to just want to sum up the price of the products. So I think with this sum, I'm going to step into group by with this so that we can actually get a more sense of the sum. But for example, for the sum, I can just do sum price. So this is going to tell me the summation of all the price. So it's going to add all the price together and return it back to me. You can only sum something that is a number. You can't sum product name, right? Even though I can do a count of product name because you can always start the number of product name, but sum, you have to sum something that is numeric. So sum now, if I sum all the price of products we have in the tables together, we have 2,000. This is correct. I'm surprised we have one value that have all this decimal place. Okay, maybe okay. So that gives us this particular value. So you can actually use a round to actually round it up to a bit. Maybe I just want 2 decimal places as what we did before. Well, we don't necessarily have to do that anyway. So I can round it up to 2 decimal place. So instead of so that is it. Then the next thing I said the sum, I'm going to be going into group by with this sum before I continue. So we can do, so for example, I just did a sum of all the total price we have in this table, but at times that might necessarily not be what we are looking for. it could be like, okay, I want to know what is the sum for each of the supplier. We have different suppliers in this table, supplier IDs. So if I want to know the sum by each supplier, I want to know the sum by each of the suppliers. So supplier one, what's the sum? Supplier two, what's the sum? What's the sum of the products? What's the sum of the product and everything? So how do we go about it? What we actually do is to include, you can still include the supplier ID. So let me do that. Supplier ID colon, comma, then we have our sum of price. So, but for this to be effective, we need to, for this to work, because supply ID is not an aggregate function. So what if I'm writing an SQL script and I have an aggregate function in my scripts. So any of these aggregate function, any other thing that is not an aggregate function, just know you are a row. Any other thing that is not an aggregate function, you have to put it in your group by statement. So you have to include it in group by supplier ID. Okay, sorry, let me give this guy a name. Let me give it an header, so that an alias to mention. Are we following? Am I too fast?
Yes, you are fast.
Okay. So let me go slowly on this. So I'm saying the group by is basically more of like we trying to group data. So I'm trying to group data into like different blocks. So we have the data that just shows list of products, all the products one by one by one. But I want to do some aggregate function. I want to do some calculation on those set of data, but I want to know the price, but I don't want to know the price of everything. I want to put them in groups, and then I cannot do an aggregate function on it. That's probably what we are trying to do. So I'm trying to group my data into different suppliers ID and know the price for each of these supplier. So a simple rule of thumb is, if there is, once you have other columns in your once you have an aggregate function and you have other columns, you have to have this particular clause, which is group by, and then you have those columns, the columns you have here, other columns you have here, because I can actually have other columns. For example, I can include category ID. So if I want to say for each of the suppliers, for each of the categories, so I need to also include category ID in the group by clause. Okay. Are we following? Do we get it? Any question at this point? Any question? All right. Okay. Yeah. Can you go ahead?
That distinct function you added, sorry for taking you back. When you, for the counts, if you take out the distinct, how would your data be like? Are you saying that you just want IDs that are not duplicate records, or
Yes.
why are
So
you using the distinct?
So the first one that I ran here, which was like is without this thing. So it counts all the records, including the duplicates, except the one that are null, that is empty. So if we count everything except empty, but the next one, which when you include duplicate, okay, I didn't change. When you include distinct, it only counts the unique records. So you remember, if you check our, let's start from products. So let's start from products. We have we have different, we have some suppliers that are not they're having multiple products basically. So I have 1, 2, 3. The first one I'm saying supplier ID 1 coming 3 times, supplier ID 2 coming 2 times, 3 coming so I don't want to count them as one. I just want to count each of those suppliers uniquely. That's why I'm having a distinct. So that's going to count for me number of suppliers. So I know here now from my product table, I have 29 suppliers that are probably giving me products. So for the product I have 29 suppliers that I'm getting products from. That's what it's actually mean. Okay, so I'm slowing down on the group by because I think we probably might want to also type it on our system to see what it looks like. So the group by, so our group by clause actually comes after where. So assuming I have a where condition here, because I don't have a where before, but if I have, let me say I don't want to pick the supplier that are empty, the one, null one. So if I can have supplier ID is not null. So okay, before I run this, let me run the first one here. What we had before. So if I run this, what we had before, that one include the null. It's include null. So if I want to, I want to just remove that particular one. I don't want to show supply ID that I don't have a name or an ID for. So with that, I can, so the group by, so if I'm having a where clause here, right? The group by will come after the where clause. It doesn't come before it. It has to come after the where clause. So I could get that. So that's one thing. So also you can have multiple aggregate functions. So I can want to count. So let me remove the category ID. So let me remove the category ID. So let's just limit it to supplier. But I'm also trying to do a count of all the products for each of the suppliers. So how many products do I even have per supplier that makes up these amounts? So if you remember, count is an aggregate function, sum is an aggregate function. So we are not including that in our where clause. Well, our supply ID, that's not an aggregate function, that's just a listing. So we have to include it in our group by group space by. So I want us to notice them properly. Group space by, then we have the other columns that we have there. So then we can do run. So now I know supplier ID 1, I have 3 products, and the sum of all the price for all the products is 47. Similar thing for supplier ID 2, I have 4 products, and so on and so on and so on. So this can help us to have some additional information about the supplier, right? Or something about our products. So we know what do we have for each of the supply, what for each of the products. Okay. No. So no. So the decimal point I've already removed. So when I transform into decimal, 2 decimal points, what I did is this. Let me show you. There was a rand in front here, so which is not in your script. So I had a rand. So you need to put so if you want to make it that, so you need to add a rand function there. Do you get that? And then the group by, did I copy everything? Maybe I didn't copy. Okay, so your group by is missing from this script. So if you run this, you're still going to get an error. Column supply ID is invalid in select because it doesn't aggregate function. Yes, you understand. So this is just telling you that this supply ID you have here is not an aggregate function, so you have to have it in the group by.
Okay, so best practice, just use group by, right? After your aggregate function.
No, it's not a best practice. Once you have an aggregate function, what I mean by it's not a best practice because you don't have another option. That's why I'm saying it's not a best practice. It's something you have to just do. Once you have an aggregate function, yeah, and you have a column or a value that you are selecting that is not an aggregate function because supply ID is not an aggregate function. It's not an aggregate. You are not aggregating anything with supply ID. You have to include that in your where clause. So because you have to know, okay, so I'm using this supply ID to aggregate the data, to group the data so that I can get the data. So I'm grouping all the products in this product table by supplier ID and returning other function like sum of the product for each of the supplier ID. So that's what it's using to know. So that's what the group by has to do. So once you have just like a rule of thumb that I mentioned, any other thing you have in your where clause, once there is a group aggregate function there, any other column that is not an aggregate function, you have to include them in the group by.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so other group by that we have, other aggregate function, not group by, we have average. Average is just the average, it's just it's basically sum of all the data and count of it divided by the number of counts, right? Divided by number of number of things that we have. So I can probably want to do average. What's the average price of all our products? So if I want to get what's the average price of all our products on average, what's the price? Someone asks, or so we could just have average AVG price. So for this, we know for all the products we have, if you take some, if you sum up the product, all the price together and divide it, you're actually going to get 29 point something. So we can round it up. So I mentioned that the round up method will actually be more useful in our when you are doing average because by that time you'll be getting a lot of decimal points. So round to 2 decimal places. So I'm saying, okay, I mentioned this earlier. Round this, okay, it's round to 2 decimal place. Okay, probably because it's let me see what the value is again. 4 decimal place. Okay, this was 9. So once you round it up, it became 80. That's why you removed it. So that's so the round so but aggregate function, the average just do the average is just average. What it does is find the average on the data set. So we can also use the same thing in our so we can continue with this sample data, right? To say, okay, we want to get for each of the supplier, what is the average price? So the first average price I use is 29 is average price of all the products we have, but you can also want to get that at supplier level. So which is what I'm doing here is, okay, we are going by supplier. So I still want to leave the count and total price. So we can also do average price. The function for average is AVG. It's not average in full. It's just AVG. So let me use it in capital letter. So let me type it for capital letter. Although SQL is not case sensitive in terms of the enable, at times you just want to make everything the same case. Since I'm using capital for count and sum, let me just put this capital letter for average also. So if you can see the result, we can see now that the average value has varied from supplier to supplier. So let me round up the value so that it looks more presentable. Round it up to 2 decimal place. Okay. So if you're following, you notice now the average value as, so for each supplier they are different. So for example, even though our average value for all the products, for all the product we have 20, that's 29 point something. Well, it varies now from supplier to supplier. So for supplier one, his own average price for the product is actually supplying us is 15.67. But for like supplier four, his average is 46. So I believe we are following. I think this one is obviously it is straightforward. So we also have, so the two other ones we have is minimum and maximum. So I'm going to be taking it together. Minimum is the lowest value. Maximum is the highest value. So minimum is basically, so I can probably want to get the minimum price for each supplier. And also probably want to get the maximum price. So I believe this is general. So for example, now we can see our results. No, so with our script, you have seen, okay, we've done the count, the sum, which is of the price for each of supplier. We have the average value, we have minimum price. So minimum is okay. So for this supplier one, the lowest price on the product is 10, is 10, the value is 10, the price is 10, and the highest price is 19. So the same thing for others. So you can say, okay, that is lowest, this is the highest, this is lowest, this is highest. What exactly is? So to do that. So that's majorly what is about aggregate function. Okay, there's one more thing we look at. Let me see that thing. So the one thing we'll be looking at is if you want to probably, so I have this result now that gives me all the pricing and everything, the aggregate of all the list of products of all the values we have. So, but maybe for example, I want to actually filter out suppliers that have products higher than total price, like some of the products, like the total sum of their product that is higher than 100. So if I want to filter out maybe on an aggregate function, so I want to filter out on sum. So now I want to do like I'm doing a supply level. I'm trying to filter out this particular result to say, okay, if the sum total of all the products the supplier have is greater than 100, I can't, because it's aggregate level, you can't put that in your where clause. I can't do this in my where clause. Okay. So if I want to filter out, if I want to filter out greater than 100, so I'm probably picking the ones that are less than 100. I want to include only the ones that are less than 100. So I can't do this because of this aggregate function in my where clause. So this is probably going to throw, let's see, let's try to run it. See. So now aggregate function will appear in where clause. So this is going to throw an error. What we use that for is our having statement. So there's something called having. The same way we have where The same way we have where in our clause. So we have our select, which have the column name. We can have the table name they are selecting from. Then we have our where, which you can use to filter out some information or conditional statements, right? So we have the group by. which is okay because I'm selecting on an aggregate function. I want it to group by something like at level is changed. So all the other values that are not aggregate, you have to put in the group by. And then we have an additional something which we call halving, the halving statement. Halving is so let me run this first part for us to see. Okay. So I have the data price that some are 107. So I don't want at one like this supplier with ID 7. I don't want to have that supplier ID any longer in my result. So I want to just return only the suppliers that have some of all their products that are less than 100. So if I want to do that, you have to use the halving clause to do okay, halving total sum, like sum of the price less than or equals to. So this is less than or equals to, we covered that already last week. Less than or equals to 100. So with that, I have only list of suppliers that are less than or equals to 100. Like, I mean, that the total price of what they have are less than or equals to 100. Hey, I have some message. I'm going to see it. Let me see. Okay. So our halving, it can come just after the group buy or before the group buy. I personally prefer to put it after the group buy, but we can also have it before, just immediately before the group buy. We can also have it before immediately before the group buy. Oh, maybe it's not allowed here, but in most language you can actually have it before or after. But I prefer before, after group buy. So even the having and the where clause, they do similar function, just that the where clause we can put most of other featuring condition that we want to have. But once we want to filter or based on an aggregate function, we have to put it in our having statement. Do we understand that?
Sorry, explain it.
I didn't get the question very well. I didn't get the
So
question.
the where and the having, you said they are similar functions, but they are different
Yes.
in which area?
So they both work in the way of like conditional statement in limiting the result we are trying to pull out, in limiting the result. But the where clause is the default one, is default where clause that we use to get to filter out data based on conditions, based on different conditions. If it's less than this, if it's like this or everything. But if we want to filter out something based on an aggregate function, in this case, I want to filter out based on what the sum of the price is. So I cannot put some price in our where clause. So you have to put it in the having statement. So in SQL, you have to put that particular one. So if you are trying to filter out based on an aggregate function, so I'm trying to filter out on sum of the price. So with that, you have to put that in the having statement. That's why we are putting this here. So if we put this particular condition, that sum of price less than 100 in the where clause, you're going to get an error. It won't work. So it has to be in the having statement. Okay, this is actually the last thing we planned for today to actually cover today, which is on the having statement. So basically, what we just try to explain to us today is the aggregate function majorly. So, and our aggregate function, so let me just go over it again. We have basically so we have basically 5 here, although I think there are 7 in total. There's variance and then there's standard deviation, but you will rarely use that, but you never used it in real life. So you rarely use that. So, but we have the count, which counts how many records we have in the table, how many records we have. Then we have the sum. So sum and average only works on number. Sum and average, they work only on number. But for minimum count, minimum, maximum, those ones can work on other type of values. So I can actually do minimum. Let's look at the value we have here. So it's funny, but I can even do something as simple as a minimum of product name. So you can sum and average works only on number because you can't sum product name together. What do we get? We can't get average of product name, but I can do minimum. So what happens when you do minimum of something that is not a number is just they are different. So they are, if you remember in the beginning of our maybe computer science, if we study computer science, we know that some of these values in data in computer it's not stored as ABC. There's actually an ASCII code that represents some of these things. So we use that to know which one. So we convert our text to an ASCII code. So all these characters actually have an ASCII code that represents it. So you just do that and know which one is the lowest one. So for example, because that particular one we scroll now, the particular name we looked at start with A something. Let me see. Yes. That's one earlier. So you use the first letter to just order it and look at what's the minimum based on if you order by the alphabet, like what is the first letter of the words. So use that to get the minimum value. So let me go back to the summary that I was trying to do before. So we have the count, we have sum, we have average, we have minimum, and we have maximum. Counts basically just count every record in the database. So for counts, we look at it in three ways that we can actually use our counts. We can count all the records in the table, just using star, that counts everything. We can count the record in a particular column in the table. But the difference between counting the record in the table and counting the record in a particular column in the table is the one counting a particular record in the table is going to skip any record that is blank, that is null. It's not null, it's not going to count it. And then the third option is even counting distinct record, which is what we have here. We can include distinct. So when we say distinct, then we specify the column name. So it's going to count distinct record in that particular column, right? And so those are the 3 ways you can actually use your counts. The other thing is the sum. So the sum, you can sum up a number. You can only sum up a number, which is things like the price. You can sum up price. You can probably sum up age of people because it's also a number. Different things, sum up the salary, get average salary or something like that. Oh no, that's sum. Then we have the average. We have average. We have minimum value. We have maximum. We have minimum and we have maximum. So initially we started our class with case, right? If you remember the case statement that we mentioned, which is you can never have case when, then you have the condition. And then, then the result, what you want it to do. Else, sorry, what is that? So you can have multiple case, you can have multiple when, so you can have multiple of these. Then you can have your else. Else is also if all this is not satisfied, what do you do? The else is optional, so I can actually leave out else if I don't want to do anything. So then we have our end else. So let me use if you still remember this. So I'm trying to round up the class. I just want us to go through to remember what has been done. So I think at this point, do you have any question?
Okay, sir. One of my questions is
Okay.
okay. One of my question is, so it means that whenever you are working on a worksheet like this, you cannot have multiple select function. So if you have multiple select functions, it's going to throw error because that's how you are selecting it. So that's my
Okay.
first question.
So once you highlight, if you highlight something, so for example, I have multiple selects on my own. So if you highlight what you want it to run, it will run. And then if you can actually have multiple selects and it will also work if you terminate each of your statements with a semicolon. So for example, I'm selecting only one and running it, right? But I can also select multiple ones. So if I select like all these, let me select the 4 of them. I don't know how this guy will treat it. Okay, yes. So here now I can see. So you can see tabs. So if you have semicolon at the end of it runs all the 4 and give it to them as different tabs. Yeah. So if you probably terminate each of them, it won't throw error. So go ahead. What's the next question? Lainka. Oh, I thought you have multiple questions.
Okay. No, let him go then. I'll come back with my second question. I want to try it on my end.
Okay, Lainka. Adiola, please go next.
Okay. Mine is not actually not the question. Sorry. So as much I try to, I think this is where the logicality begins. So the previous class we had was having the background of what SQL actually is. But this class today, it's the where the logicality set in, and I really enjoyed it. So as much I try to follow through with my own worksheet while you are going through the lecture, or a bit more distracted because I needed to gain from your explanation more. So please, I need for my own personal use, I think I will need a copy of this worksheet, this your script. Because if I'm going through the video, I used to have this long short-sightedness, and it's giving me training highs through the.
So I'm going to share that. I'm going to share that in the mail after the training. We are going to share that.
Okay, I will appreciate.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't really have a question because I follow through.
Okay, right. Thank you. Ugo Chuku.
Yes, I was gonna thank you, Yomi. This case, is that where you now apply the parentheses and the or in order of preference?
No.
Is this where
That's
you
okay. So this one is just probably so the case statement. The case statement can be in your select or so this is not where you actually attend priority. Is that one the order of precedence that I talked about is majorly for our where clause. So in the where clause, you can actually have multiple conditions now where clause. So for example, here I use the example of this product where I have product ID 1. So if I select only product 1, it shows me all the product supplier ID is 1. So I can also further filter it down to be okay. Give me the supplier ID that is 1 and category is 1. So that gives this removing the last one. But if I want to probably maybe this is not the best example, but for an example, I also want to include the category that is 2. So if I do this so I do if so category ID is 1 equals 1 or category ID equals 2, what happens there is it goes ahead and it checks it because of the order of precedence and comes before or. So this first 2 condition takes place before it's coming to or this. So this is so you're seeing that okay, this together then this one is a different line. But what I have in mind, so it depends on what you have in mind anyway. So, but what I had in mind, what I was doing is I want to get where the supplier ID is 1 and category is either 1 or 2. So for me to be able to do that, so but here now I'm seeing supplier that are not 1. I'm seeing supplier that are 1, 2, 3, and others. So for you to do that successfully, you need to put it in parentheses so that instead of it running these first two together, it actually runs the one in parentheses first. So now in this case, this is going to take precedence over the and. So because the all here is now inside the parentheses, so it runs the parentheses first, then before it runs what we have is an and. So if I run this now, I'm going to have like the expected results. So that is where we actually come into the the order of precedence parts. Yes, all right.
Okay, sir. So one of my questions is, in a work setting, would you be given the exact, like, are you be told to work with Microsoft SQL or work with MySQL Workbench, or will you be told specifically, or SQLite, or you are just going to work with your preferred one? Or is it that
It
because
depends
there's a
on
little bit of difference in the syntax? Okay, sir.
the syntax. As much as possible in this training, we try to use the syntax that are the same across board. So SQL is a standard language that most of the database actually adopt, but some database have additional function. When you look at it, there's some additional function and some things. Because initially I wanted to use trunk to do something, but I discovered that trunk is not available in Microsoft SQL here. But also Microsoft SQL have an equivalent. But most of the things we actually covered in this class is applicable in almost every language. So when you get to workplace, you're not going to select database you want to work with. Most likely, you're not going to select database. Database most likely will be what the organization is using. So for example, if you are in a banking, most likely you might either be working with Oracle or Microsoft SQL. If it's Nigerian banking, we most likely work with Oracle or Microsoft SQL. And the reason is Oracle, most of the platform they use, most of the banking platform, core banking platform actually is built on Oracle. So the banking data is already on Oracle platform. So that's where you are going to be querying it on that Oracle platform. And if they have data on Microsoft SQL, probably they have some structure process that move data to Microsoft SQL. They are going to run it on Microsoft SQL. But as much as possible, we try to make sure that okay, this class we are covering, we are making it in a way that any database you are using, you can apply what we've covered here. Is that fine, Lanka?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I don't know if there is any other question, but in the absence of none, we can actually call it a day at this point. Thank you everyone for joining. We are going to be uploading the recording, so let me start the recording.
Thank you.
So you're going to be uploading the recording and share it with us latest by tomorrow. So thank you everyone.